Welcome to Tactical Talk. This is Zain. Today the topic of our show is Donald Trump's policy on Iran. Today the guest of our show is U.S. Army Major General Paul Vallely, who is the founder of StandUpAmericaUS.org and also a senior defense analyst. Welcome to our show, Major General Paul Vallely. This is Zain Khan. It's a pleasure to have you on Tactical Talk.
Thank you, Zain. Happy to be with you again.
General, let's get to the first question. Barack Obama's administration cut a deal with the Iranians. Could you please describe what the deal was?
Well, it was a deal put together with Secretary of State Kerry at the time, and it was a very, very poor deal because it basically allowed Iran to continue with their program really unsupervised. It also gave them $160 billion of cash that they could use about any way they wanted to, and they did, to continue their support of international terrorism and the further development of their nuclear program. So President Trump knew from the beginning, as many of us have who have watched what's happening in Iran, and know from their past history they were not going to stop their pursuit of a solid nuclear capability. And of course, that's what they did. So Donald Trump basically called their bluff and pulled out of the treaty, which was a good idea.
With that said, why does the Trump administration disagree and outright reject the Iran deal?
Well, because number one, if you look at all the details of that, and what we and European members agreed to, and what Iran agreed to, basically came up, everything was to the advantage of Iran and advantage to no one else. And from that standpoint, that's why they considered it a bad deal. First of all, to get in and to be able to have inspection teams go in and inspect the facilities, and they were not going to permit that, even though they said they might under some circumstances. Second, they would not divulge the current status of their nuclear program to include the amount of fissionable material they had, and the fact they were working with North Korea and testing the launch systems as well as the nuclear warheads, which was done in North Korea. And so a lot of the investigation that we have done at Stand Up America and working with the Iranian resistance group, we knew full well that it was not a good deal for Europeans or for Americans. But President Trump's the only one that's had the courage to stand up and say, this is a bad deal for us and the Europeans, and we're going to pull out of it. And if we have to do a new deal, another kind of deal, we'll look at that. And so I think that's the situation right now. I mean, even in the Middle East, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, nobody trusts, it seems, Iran, except maybe a few others in the Middle East. And I won't mention their names at this time. But the vast majority of Middle East countries don't trust Iran. So why should the United States?
General, let's get to a very important question. How sure is the Trump administration and the Pentagon that Iran could probably be very close into making a nuclear weapon if Barack Obama's Iran deal had been in place?
Well, it's not in place anymore, so that's past history. President Obama couldn't make a good deal if he tried. He doesn't have the talents or skills, and never has had to make a deal like President Trump has. But we've known for a couple years that they already have a capability. They have the launch system. They have the guidance system. They have the Shahab 3 rockets and more advanced systems so that they can launch. The only thing that was missing was the nuclear warhead, which through intelligence, that was tested in North Korea with Iranian observers there on each type of a nuclear test that North Korea was doing. So when you tie those two together, you come back and say, well, if they have the launch system, they have the guidance system, all they need to do is screw the nuclear warhead on the top, of which they already have. So from our standpoint, it's not that they're going to have a nuclear capability, they have it now.
Which countries primarily does a nuclear Iran threat if it develops the capability in the near future?
Well, their number one target, of course, is Israel. And the conflict now between Saudi Arabia and Iran makes also Saudi Arabia a target in the Middle East. So Israel and Saudi Arabia would be the two top targets. Then the third target would be the United States, working through or with North Korea to some degree. But Russia sold Iran what we call a launch system called the Club X, C-L-U-B-X. And that allows them to launch from cargo ships in the Atlantic Ocean or in the Mediterranean Sea. It also allows the nuclear weapon to be put on a transporter and transported by land. So Iran has that capability also. And you don't have to take my word. You can Google that Club X system and you'll see the capability that Iran has to deliver any kind of a launch, Shahab missile or other, into those near countries, and also to launch through a cargo ship off the coast of the United States.
But let's examine the Iranian argument too. They claim that their nuclear program is to generate energy. How sure is the Trump administration that it's not the case?
Well, I think by the provocations that Iran has made to destroy Israel, number one, and also to kill America with their signs and everything. So they've made over threats against Iran and also, against Israel and the United States, and most recently in the last year against the Saudi Arabia. And so if the mullahs with their tyrannical government there are declaring that, at the same time building up their nuclear capability and conventional capability, as well as supporting Hamas and Hezbollah, two known international terror groups, it's all there. You don't have to be a detective to understand what their motives are. There's no mystery there. Well, part of your questions is the motivation of Iran to build a nuclear program in order to provide energy to Iran. And so I would think at this time that's what they would be doing and focusing on that and show the development of what that energy provider could be in the form of nuclear energy, rather than focusing on the military side of things, which is rocket launches, missile launches, and the capability to attack countries. So their motivations and their actions speak for themselves. And there's no apparent focus that anybody has seen that they're working on domestic energy source, such as a nuclear reactor to provide electrical energy, for example.
Okay, Major General Paul Vallely, let's get to the last question. How does the Trump administration plan to deal with the situation? What steps would they take to stop Iran's nuclear program? In short, what is Trump's policy on Iran?
Well, the policy is to stand strong against the threats of Iran. Number two, to support the Iranian resistance. It's called the NCR, National Council for the Resistance of Iran, and they're headquartered in France. And also to use the power of the airwaves, radio and television, to broadcast into Iran to support any kind of resistance for a regime change in Iran. And I think also to continue to provide a strong military presence, naval primarily and air, in the Persian Gulf region, as well as in the Mediterranean Sea. And so I think with that, we're posturing the United States with other allies The idea that if Iran becomes over energetic and decides to launch any kind of an attack, that severe military action will be taken against Iran. Now, what Israel is focusing on is the route from Iran across to Iraq through southern Syria, tying into Lebanon with support of their proxy, their Hezbollah. And that's why you've seen a lot of attacks against all and any Iranian assemblage or focus on any bases, launch facilities for rockets in southern Syria. And so that has been in the news, as you know, for the last month and a half. So Israel's watching very closely what happens in Syria.
Thank you so much, Major General Paul Vallely, for being on Tactical Talk. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Zain. My pleasure as well. All my best.
This is U.S. Military General Paul Vallely. We were discussing Donald Trump's policy on Iran. Until the next episode of Tactical Talk, this is Zain. Take care and goodbye.